Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new Just No HOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, Gunnery Sergeant's Revenge. I had to get permission from a friend of mine to share the story. I find it to be a heartwarming story that shows that if you mess with one veteran, you mess with us all. So I have a friend that we'll call John. His grandfather is a Korean War and Vietnam War veteran. He served as an infantryman in the United States Marine Corps for over 20 years. He's very proud of his service, and his son and grandson, my friend John, have all followed in his footsteps and served as infantrymen in the Marine Corps proudly. So John's grandfather, who we will call Gunny, retired to a southwestern state that is very hot and covered in cactus. He was widowed and wanted to live closer to his son and grandson. He bought a home in a community that had an HOA. After he moved in, he hung his USMC flag and the American flag outside his home with pride, like he had done in his home back east. Shortly thereafter, he was told that he could not hang his USMC flag because it was against HOA regulations. He even went to a meeting to see if he could get an exemption for military flags, since American flags were allowed. The HOA said he could not fly the flag outside, but he was more than welcome to keep it in his home or garage. Gunny, to his credit, decided to go ahead and handle it in a civilized way. Now Gunny is a perfect example of a gruff old veteran. And that USMC flag that he flew was older than his grandson, who had just gotten out of the Marine Corps. Gunny asked John if he could invite some of his veteran buddies over for a barbecue and a little think tank session. Including Gunny, John, and John's father, there were 12 of us there. Gunny tells us that he has a plan and he needs our help. He hands us the HOA handbook and tells us that he wants to give them incentive to change their minds about his flag, and he'd like our help to do it. After a couple hours of brainstorming, we come up with a plan to encourage the HOA board to allow a military flag to be flown. We put together a plan to go ahead and show our military pride to the entire neighborhood. Now the HOA rules say that he can have anything he wants in his garage, and he can keep his garage door open as long as the garage is being used. In addition, the HOA rules say that there is a quiet ordinance from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. every night. Keep this in mind. So John and John's father get every veteran they know, including me, to join in Operation Pride. Starting on a Monday, several of us gather outside Gunny's home. And at 6 a.m. sharp, we play reveille over a boombox. We even stand in formation and do calisthenics right there on his front yard, loudly counting off as though it were boot camp. Those of us who can, because several of us I have bad knees including myself, go for a run or jog in formation up and down the streets of the neighborhood singing jodies. Gunny even taught us a very colorful one called Napalm Sticks to kids. The rest of the day, we all take turns hanging out in his garage, where he has proudly displayed a nice collection of military flags, many donated by us. Included are the traditional branch flags, but also the more colorful Death from Above, Kill Them First and Let God Sort It Out, and a few other less politically correct flags. While we were in the garage, we needed to be doing something. So John and I chipped in and bought one of those punching dummies that look like a person. You know, the ones that you fill with sand or water and then punch. Well, wouldn't you know it, Gunny allowed us to do bayonet practice in his garage with the dummy. All day there was at least one of us in there yelling, "Kill! Kill! Kill!" while stabbing that poor dummy. Gunny even let those who didn't have their own rifle and bayonet to borrow one of his old M1s to practice. It was like holding history. When we weren't taking our frustration out on the dummy, we did some weightlifting in the garage, practiced some hand-to-hand combat techniques, and had traditional military lectures. Some of these lectures included why you use a condom when in Vietnam, how best to stab a person with a knife, and how to project your voice when on parade ground. This would continue until 10 p.m. The next day it started all over again. We did this for over a week. Gunny seemed to enjoy having the company of some veterans at his house all day, and we got a pretty good workout and some great memories. Gunny he even shared with us some stories from his time in Korea and Vietnam. A lot of us ended up sharing war stories. Some, including myself, even took the gatherings as an opportunity to vent some of our struggles with PTSD. The group became not just about getting revenge on the HOA, but about supporting each other. The cops were called twice on us, but there was nothing they could do since we weren't breaking the law. Bayonet practice in your garage and working out are not crimes. After 8 days of fun with Gunny, the HOA sent him a letter stating that he was free to fly his USMC flag outside his house. With that, our daily meetups were no longer needed. But a lot of us have grown close to Gunny over that week and each other at our meetings. Depending on the day and the time of day, there were anywhere from 3 to 18 of us at that house at any given time. Veterans of Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, and Iraq. It meant a lot to us to spend time with each other like this. Gunny set it up so that on the last Sunday of every month, we were all welcome to come to his place for a barbecue and a bonding session. This tradition was kept alive for 18 months until Gunny died. Every one of us attended his funeral. The day of the funeral we all gathered outside his house at 6 a.m., played reveille, and went on a jog up and down the street singing jodies in his honor. That old USMC flag still flies at John's father's house proudly. This was 14 years ago, but I remember like it was yesterday. Next one is titled, FHOA, Malicious Compliance. So, I live in a still being built subdivision that has an HOA that was put together by the developer. Once all the houses are finished, we're going to start our own HOA, and most of the people in the neighborhood are pretty on board with basic rules and nothing too outlandish. Have whatever mailbox you want as long as it's legal. However, we currently are living under the shadow of the developer's HOA. One of their rules is that we aren't allowed to park a vehicle in our driveway for greater than 72 hours. The residents think it's a stupid idea, and most of us have decided that one's going away and we're going to institute the has to run rule. We're adults here. As it turns out, I was going to Philadelphia for a conference the second week of January. We have a 3-car garage. One of the slots is my wife's car, one is our motorcycles, and the furthest is my pickup. However, we were reorganizing our Christmas decorations and we had my slot taken up by the boxes and totes. My truck was parked in the driveway for an entire week. Flash forward to 2 weeks ago, I get a note on my door saying I owe the builder, not an HOA, $1,000. $200 for every night my truck was parked in the driveway, not moving, for 5 days. I'm a little uppity about this. I contact one of my neighbors who has a car he regularly keeps in the driveway and ask him if he's ever gotten one of these. He tells me that when he bought his house, there wasn't HOA paperwork, there was a neighborhood agreement. I went back, grabbed my paperwork and compared it to his, then to another neighbor's, then another's. Turns out, we were the only ones who'd signed this agreement, and it hadn't even existed outside of that. Our sales agent had sold us our house, then died, RIP, and was replaced by eventually 3 other people. I contacted my lawyer, who asked if there was any proof that the truck hadn't moved. Not that I knew of. Then he asked who would be 1. Reporting this, and 2. Who would be benefiting from it. We currently have one of the builder's sales agents living in another cul-de-sac around the bend, albeit she sells for a different neighborhood. She's the only person in the entire neighborhood who hasn't joined in on any of our get-togethers, the organizing ones or the just hanging out in the summer ones. She drives a mid-O Accord. On my security camera, I see her Accord every day swinging by our cul-de-sac. Every day just about the same time, when she's done with work and comes home. She'll patrol, slowly, around the neighborhood. I contact my lawyer and let him know. He writes a beautiful letter, telling the builder that, according to the county where I live, HOA rule violations need to be paid to an HOA, not a builder. That the document that I signed doesn't say I need to pay the builder, so I will therefore be paying the HOA, which doesn't exist, $1,000 for use in improving the neighborhood. He also writes a beautiful letter asking the builder to cease sending harassing entities into the neighborhood. In other words, she can't call out anything she sees on me because I'm the only one they can nail. I got on the Facebook page for my neighborhood and asked them what the best way for me to spend my $1,000 would be. 15 of them joined in with some money, and we're buying a floating gazebo for one of our green spaces. Next one is titled, Jeffrey's Revenge. This is going back a good 15 years or so. I bought my first home, was super excited to finally have a piece of the real estate pie. This was a townhouse governed by an HOA. My realtor went on and on about how great this HOA was. The pool was immaculate. The landscaping was done promptly every Wednesday and Sunday without a hitch. Snow removal was immediate and even included my doorstep. Figured for the price I would have my own little nirvana 2 blocks from the beach. Wrong. The HOA president was a total a-hole. He and his cronies would pick a fight with me over stupid crap. I'd leave my mail in the mailbox overnight. I'd get home late from a second job and would always grab it in the AM. Which they considered to be a violation as there were store flyers peeking out of the box and it violated their neatness standards. I purchased a small trash can for my back porch to place my recycling in order to not clutter my kitchen counter with bottles and cans, and was told I was accumulating hazardous waste outside my unit. Note: I emptied this can daily as I would exit my back door daily to walk my dog on the property line, which is where the dumpsters were located. If I sneezed too loud, he'd find a way to make it an issue. I finally had enough and put the unit on the market. My realtor placed a for sale in my window that weekend when I was out of town, and the HOA president lost his crap. I came home to 15 messages from all hours of the day threatening legal action if it's not removed, and why am I not returning his calls. Apparently calling the number on the sign and asking the realtor to remove it was too much of an inconvenience for him. I took it down, called my realtor, who apologized profusely for the oversight as she thought signs were prohibited outside the unit only. I was done at this point. This guy was being a prick to the highest standards. My day job coworker and I were talking about these events, and she and I came up with a plan to result in me being a spiteful ninny. She worked at True as a second job as the person who did a majority of their displays. They would toss the old cardboard setups, so she got the okay from the store manager to take the old Jeffrey's home. These were the tall mascot giraffes that stood on the floor with a base. One by one, we set them up in front of each of my windows. HOA president, as expected, lost his crap and demanded that I remove these signs at once. I explained that they were not signs in the window, they were freestanding cardboard cutouts, and there isn't a darn thing in the bylaws prohibiting such. He threatened legal action, had the HOA's treasurer fine me for my violation, to the tune of $100 per giraffe. I disputed the fine and provided pics of the freestanding cardboard cutouts and never heard another word on the matter. The next HOA statement showed only my monthly fee. I moved out a few months later and sold the unit right after. Never knew what happened in conversation with the HOA president and the treasurer, but I kept those Jeffreys in front of my window until I left with no issue. Last one is titled, Another Crazy Downstairs Neighbor Story. Last April, I bought my first home, a condo here in Philadelphia. Settlement in the middle of the month, and then immediately had contractors begin a 6 to 7 week project redoing the kitchen, bathrooms, bedrooms, pretty much everything except the living room floor. About a week into the renovation, I got an email from the community manager, hired by the HOA as a full-time liaison between residents, saying that my downstairs neighbor had suffered damage to her condo due to our construction. Now, these 3-story condo buildings have separate entrances for each 6 units, 2 on each floor, so as my downstairs neighbor, she was also in the same stairwell as me. This wasn't like a big building with long hallways where coming upstairs would have meant quite a trick. It's out her door, up 10 stairs, and she's right at mine. I contacted my contractor, who apologized, said they had to do some lightweight jackhammering in the kitchen, and said he would fully cover any damage done to neighboring apartments. I went downstairs to talk to my neighbor, apologize and explain the situation. She was quite upset, and made the damage out to be much worse than the community manager had explained, saying that her bathroom walls were cracked and her marble tiles were ruined. Came away from the experience thinking she had been perhaps a little too upset given that I was nothing but apologetic, and that all the repairs would be done for free. Contractor took a look at the damage and didn't think it was all that bad, but he would fix it anyways. 2 weeks later, another run-in. Stopped by the condo to see how work was going, and the workers were playing music at a loud but reasonable for construction volume, as it was 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and most of the windows were open. I had been there about 5 minutes before my neighbor knocked at the door. When I opened it, she was in near hysterics, saying how the music was insanely loud, how she'd been hearing multiple complaints all morning from all over, and that she was about to call the HOA president and try to have him do something about it. She went on and on for several minutes. The complaint itself wasn't the problem, it's possible the music was a tad too loud, but the reaction was so over the top, as she had my phone number from the first encounter, and could have easily texted me to ask them to turn it down, or come up and politely asked herself. After that, I didn't hear from her for several months, until I got an email from the community manager, reminding me that a certain percentage of my apartment had to be covered with carpet or area rugs. I replied that it was, and he said he'd gotten a complaint from my neighbor to the HOA president that my footsteps were sometimes loud. She never once said anything to me, nor texted me. Straight to the HOA president she went. This was late August. I told the community manager that my apartment was properly covered, sent him photos, and once again included my phone number and said that I was perfectly fine if my neighbor wanted to text me to let me know. Now, I've heard from her again. Again, she skipped talking to her neighbor and instead went to the HOA president. I have a meeting with her later today, and I heard her on the phone this morning still complaining about her bathroom renovations. About that, my contractors tell me they made several attempts to contact her and she never responded, and so they stopped trying. At any point in the last 6 months, if she didn't have their information, all she had to do was come upstairs. I work from home and clearly, she knows when I'm around. I just get the feeling this is going to turn into a whole ongoing thing with this woman, and I'm not really sure what to do next. Thanks for listening.